All right, so those of you who are following along with Keone here this week in the leg workout that we did, which you guys that are watching this video, I'm sure have already watched that video. He did tweak his back a little bit, didn't hurt it, just tweaked it. Most of you who've been training long enough know that we use the term tweak all the time. And I believe that he's fine. I do think that he was very, very, tight from being on a plane last night. He flew in last night. Plane was delayed. He's training hard anyway. He's probably a little bit dehydrated and got right into the gym for a very hard leg workout today. And so for that reason, Monday is the day that I always see Coach Don, who's here. And I'm gonna still see him anyway because I need him. But before me, he decided to come earlier and help out with making sure that Keone can keep on training hard and help with his recovery. So while he is working on Keone, he'll be kind of explaining what he's doing and why, and Keone will just be taking it basically. And I think that you guys will learn there's a lot of value to having somebody do body work, whether it's deep tissue or all kinds of different manipulation techniques, like T therapy. He does a lot of body work as far as mobility and stability and functional stuff. I don't know what they're gonna do today, but whatever they're gonna do, he's got basically 24 hours, now we'll call it 36 hours to rest before I wreck his back in the gym on Wednesday. So he has no time for breaks between now and the New York Pro because we're gonna win in New York. He's gonna win, I'm gonna just be there with him in spirit. So I'm gonna get out of the way and let these guys do it, and then I'll get mine after. Jackie, you're gonna not bother them.
We're gonna do a rendition of Saturday Night Fever, right? Here's what I want you to do. You're going to tilt your pelvis like this and tuck it underneath. So you see the movement? It's basically called pelvic tilting. Yes. Okay. So
you use those muscles before, Keone.
So yeah, exactly. Right. So let me ask you a question. Does it feel easier to arch your back or to flatten it?
Probably flat.
So tuck it underneath. Okay. So here's what I want you to do: arch your back, flatten it, arch your back, flatten it, arch your back, find the middle. Right about there, right? So that's basically a neutral pelvis. Kind of relax. So notice when you relax how you kind of go right into extension, okay, and your knees drive out. So now do this for me. Put your feet neutral like this and make your feet straight.
Okay. It's so natural.
I know. So that's an ankle thing. We'll talk about that later. Bend your knees a little bit. Okay, and now give me another, yes, do like 10 of those pelvic tilts. So PJ, just see if you can spot this. Do like another 4 or 5. So we're looking at flexion and extension. He says they feel about the same, but if I'm looking, it looks like it's much easier for him to extend than it is to drop into flexion.
Yeah, it is.
You see that?
Yep.
So if you're in extension-based back pain and you're here all the time, we've got to get you to neutral. So basically a big part of what I'm going to be doing today is just trying to work on all of your muscles and fascia and get you into a spot that you're in a little bit more neutral pelvis so that you're not compressing all the nerves and discs in your back. Make sense? Okay. Okay. Again, pick the left foot up and put it down. Pick your right foot up and put it down. Okay, don't move. Okay. So, if you want to stand behind me for just a second, I don't want to make this stuff up. So, we find the AC joint. So my question is that level, yes or no?
To me, it looks like he is higher on this side.
Okay, so we're seeing the same thing. So now, if we think like an architect, and this is another, what we call ASIS, is another bony landmark. So are they level, or is one higher than the other?
Higher on that side too.
Okay, so now if we go like this, and don't move, compare the negative spaces here and here. Are they the same?
No, it's got more space there.
Now, this is normal, natural, anatomical variation everybody has them. Face the wall. So now we're gonna do the same thing in the back. So we find where the collarbone and the shoulder blade come together, what we call our AC joint. Tell me what you're seeing there, PJ.
It is higher here.
Okay. And if we go ASIS. Now, this is really interesting as it relates to low back pain. I want you to put your hands on the front of your thighs, and I want you to slowly bend over and touch your toes.
Keep my feet how it is.
That's perfect. Now see what my thumbs are doing?
Yep.
So come on back. So what this is telling me is that this side of his pelvis is rotating open as he comes over. This one is fixed. Because when you bend over, your pelvis is supposed to expand to accommodate. So both sides should either do this or they should do that. So that's very common. So what would be interesting is to see if that changes all after I work on them. So we're gonna do one last thing. Pick up your left foot, put it down. Pick up your right foot, put it down. Close your eyes. Is your weight more on your left foot or your right? So let's talk about the right foot. Is it more on the ball or the heel?
Heel.
Is it more on the inside or the outside?
Outside.
So on this split, we're favoring here. Now let's talk about the left foot, ball or heel?
Ball.
Is it more on the inside or the outside?
Inside.
So right now your weight distribution is favored on the right leg and it's here and here. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
So let's see if it changes. Let's get you on the table. Let's actually start your face up. PJ, you said he's a freak. How's his tolerance for pain?
I know he's a warrior in the gym, that's for sure. He's strong as not, so. Then again, it's one of those guys that don't like having to do hands on him, so it's tough to say. We'll find out though. But he is a damn machine in the gym, that's for sure. He recovers fast, so I think he'll bounce back in this week.
All right, so remember our deal. If I go over a 7, I want you to speak up and let me know.
Sir.
The type of work that I do is very unique. It's like myofascial release, and so where a lot of therapists focus on muscles, I'm kind of concerned with the fascia, and that's what I'm doing is basically stretching out the fascia, the connective tissue. You know, I spent 5 years working with NFL.
Okay, so it's just NFL.
Well, hang on.
Well, not meant. I guess for the
I don't work so much with the NFL anymore. I kind of resigned from that. I did that for 5 years.
Okay. I'm sorry, okay. My last DT class week, man. Oh man. I know I had knots in my back. That guy.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. This is like, you know, this is a really long time. That's so overdone. You know, your nervous system at the end of the day controls the tension in your tissues.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to help you recover by loosening you up. But when I'm digging my elbow in you, I'm just tightening you up.
Exactly.
So
I was like, you gave me a pinched nerve or something like that.
people that do that, it's a lack of experience, and it doesn't need to be painful to be therapeutic. In fact, I would argue that when you're jacking on people that much, you're like in a cold sweat because it's painful, right? That's actually counterproductive.
I think it's crazy how, because these teachers I get, man, like what you're explaining, they'll explain it to me. They'll tell me that there's no point in doing this and that, but they do it.
Yeah. Here's the other thing, when you're working on elite athletes in or around competition, all the rules change.
Mm-hmm.
So, particularly like working with athletes, if I go in and I loosen up a bunch of muscles in your hip and then you go run and pull a muscle, that's my fault. So if anything, when you're working on athletes, particularly around competition, you need to be really conservative.
Does this stuff, another thing when I got my deep tissue, do you recommend to drink a lot of extra water after this?
You know, here's what's funny about that.
I was really dehydrated afterwards.
What's funny about that is, again, I've been a therapist for 25 years. And over the course of 25 years, similar to bodybuilding, the sport of bodybuilding has changed a lot in 25 years. And so has the therapy world. So you've got a segment of the industry now, we call them the pain science folks.
Okay.
And basically their stance is that unless there is a study to prove something, then it doesn't exist. And so they would really take exception and say, well, there's no proof that drinking a lot of water after you makes any difference, right? But I would say this, is that, you know, as a bodybuilder, you're probably more in tune with your body than just about anyone.
Exactly.
So when you're training, particularly when you're training really heavy and intensely, like Do you ever experiment with fluid intake?
I just drink it.
So you just drink a ton of water?
I usually drink a gallon of workout. So
now let me ask you this. On the times that you work out really intensely and you don't drink a lot of water, do you feel the difference?
Oh yeah, I'm dehydrated.
Yeah, so that's what we would, I guess, call anecdotal evidence, and the science people say that that's not to be trusted. But I think that everybody's a little bit different, so you experiment with, you try different things and you figure out what works for your body.
Correct.
Now, for me, I don't need somebody with a clipboard to tell me, this study, justifies what I already know. I think most people don't drink enough water anyways. It's like detoxification. Some people will say that, your liver and your kidneys, that they detoxify your body, and any notion that doing anything outside of that, whether it's cleansing or drinking water or taking any type of supplements, any, suggestion outside of that it's false and there's no science to back it up. And I would agree, in a perfect world, when your body's functioning the way that it should, then yes, your liver, your kidneys, and all of that are designed to detoxify your body. But what happens in periods of stress or sickness or illness, or if you're not, 100% healthy? Now, this is the type of work that I do. It's not really relax and fall asleep. We're here for a purpose. So you have to forgive me for a little bit. So I want to do just a little experiment right now, which is I want you to just stand up for a second. Now, the goal is not to necessarily touch your toes. So if it hurts, it's not that I want you to touch your toes. I want you to flex your spine and see if that feels any different. Now that all we've done so far is just do some fascial work on your quads. Does that feel the same?
It's tighter.
Worse or better? Okay, fair enough. All right, so let's get you. Pressure okay?
Yep, good.
So just as a point of education, if this makes sense to you, you notice that I'm not using a lot of oil because I don't want to slide over the place. I'm using just enough so that I don't burn your skin, but the goal is to actually hook the tissue and spread it out.
Okay.
So have you had a lot of massage?
Just a couple of deep,
So does this kind of feel a little bit different?
Yes, it does. Usually they'll probably be all in my back right now.
Well, and what's interesting is you can feel the pressure, right?
I can feel the pressure.
So, I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on you, but the way that I'm putting it on you is different.
Correct. Reminds me that guy had his elbow on that.
So the latest science, they're basically saying that fascia is like a second nervous system. So one of the things I can tell you from being a therapist is that your fascia, it responds to pressure and speed, right? So if I just take pressure and I push straight down in and start jacking on you, your connective tissue sees that as a threat and it responds by tightening up, right? But I'm coming in at an angle, and so the angle and the speed are different. So I'm still putting a lot of pressure on you, but I'm doing it in a way that doesn't cause all of your tissues to contract, to fight against it.
Gotcha.
The body's really, really smart. gonna do something probably a little strange, but with your hips. Okay, so lift your hips up off the table. There you go. Okay, there you go. All right, so this is kind of like what I call a poor man's decompression. So you can go ahead and relax now. So normally, just because you're so quad dominant, it tilts your hips like this. So when it tilts your hips, what we call anterior, now you're compressing all the nerves and discs in your lower back. Okay. So right now what I'm actually trying to do is get this all stretched out and tilt your pelvis in the opposite direction, which then stretches all of the tissue in your lower back. Okay. So when you stack the pillow underneath your hips, it starts to encourage that tilt in the opposite direction. So remember this, because if you ever jack your back up, if you lay like on the floor and you put a pillow underneath your hips, okay, can you feel? That's what we're trying to do, is basically stretch up. You feel that?
Yes, I do.
So take a nice big deep breath in. And exhale. I promise you, bro, I haven't got a karate shop in a while. Remember when you were standing up, how we had you arch your back and right, flatten it?
Right.
So right now, I don't want you to arch it. So when you arch it, that's when we're compressing. But I want you to actually tuck your hips underneath and flatten. So take a deep breath in, exhale, and now tuck your hips under. Okay, and relax. See, I haven't even stuck an elbow in you yet. You ever play football?
Yep.
What other sports have you played?
Football and track.
Yep, you got the ankles.
And the calves.
The tight, stiff ankles, how many times have you sprained your ankles?
Oh, man.
Ask me why I'm asking you that question. Let me ask you this, how many times have you tweaked your knee?
I actually hurt it my senior year of football season.
Sprain, ACL, what did you do?
It was strained. I was out for 5 games.
A big part of the biomechanics stuff that I do is identifying like imbalances, you know, things that can potentially lead to injury.
I swear, man, that guy last week, man, he's doing about the same motion he was doing, but it was just 10 times harder.
Well, first of all, the thing is like you got a foot of plate armor, right?
Okay.
So the stuff that we really need to work on is deeper.
Okay.
But your body's not going to let me go deeper unless I work through the foot of armor you've got on the outside. So if I just try to dive in there with all this pressure without working all of this, yeah, your body, you're not going to be happy. When's your competition?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. So see, so that's a classic example of, you know, when the stakes are really high and you're working with professional athletes really close to competition, you have to be really conservative.
Yes, sir.
Because in a best case scenario, I work on you a little bit, you wake up tomorrow, your back feels pretty good, and you get to train the way that you want. That's the best case scenario, right?
Yes.
What's the worst case scenario?
You jack my back up and
I've never worked on you before, I don't know anything about you, I don't know anything about your history, I go in like a hero, I stick my elbow in your back, you wake up tomorrow, you can't walk, you can't shoot. You're not going to be very happy with me, and PJ's definitely not going to be very happy with me.
Correct.
So see if this makes sense to you, is that your ankle as a joint, when you walk and move and run and squat and lunge and do all of these things, the ankle is collecting information and sending it to your brain.
Okay.
So your ankle and your hip, and particularly your glute, are connected.
Okay.
So when you lose movement in the ankle, what we call functional dorsiflexion, among other things, right? This is dorsiflexion. So when you lose range in your ankle, now your ankle is not collecting as much information or the right information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now because your foot's not collecting proper information, your glute isn't getting proper information.
Makes sense.
So as a bodybuilder, you understand like the importance of recruitment and peak contraction.
Very
All right, do me a favor, just wiggle that foot around a little bit. Just kind of go around in a circle. And now do the same thing with the other foot. So do they feel the same or different?
This one feels looser now.
Yeah, of course it does.
Is that the answer you wanted?
Well, it's never about the answer I want. Look.
Well, that's what I felt. It feels looser now.
In fact, the worst thing that you can do is tell me what you think I want to hear. Because then you're just letting me off easy, right?
No, it felt looser when I did both of them together.
Yeah. So normally what I would do is have you walk around, compare both ankles. Then I'll work on one ankle and get you up and have you walk around some more so your brain can kind of compare the two. And you'll walk around in a circle and come right back to the table. Okay? Stand up. Because it's different when you're weight bearing with gravity than when you're laying down. Okay? Just take a walk over to the door. Back. Come on back up. All right. So here's the thing. I'm gonna do a little bit more on your back, but I'm not gonna go crazy. So one of the things that we're looking for is we're looking for 15 degrees of hip extension. That's actually functional. And in this case, there's not a lot of hip extension there. It's all lumbar extension. Deep breath in, and exhale. Give me a number. Now squeeze and rotate in the opposite direction. Now come on back. Which side is easier?
My left side was.
That was a little easier?
Yes.
So see if this makes sense to you. If you look at the shape of the bones in your lower back versus the bones in your upper back or in your neck, they're shaped differently.
Okay.
So common sense will tell you they're shaped differently, they have a different job. Okay? So the vertebrae in your lower back are not supposed to rotate. What happens is most of us, we get like this, right? You're actually supposed to be able to extend and rotate in your upper back. And most of us, we get what we call kyphotic, so we lose extension and rotation in our upper back. So now all that rotation starts happening in our lower back. And your lower back wasn't designed for that. That's how you jack up your lower back. Right? So one of the things we want to do is start to loosen up here and take some of the pressure off of our lower back. So when we put your hip into 90 degrees and have you pinch that, when you squeeze out with your knees, it turns your core on your abs and your glutes, and it locks your lower back into place.
Yes.
So now instead of getting rotation in your lower back where we don't want it, we're going to get it up higher in your upper back where we want it. So you said it was easier to go to the left. So cross your arms over your chest, squeeze and rotate.
Which way?
This way. Okay? And come on back. So relax on the way back, but when you go, squeeze. Squeeze. Squeeze this like you're trying to break it and rotate. And relax on the way back. Okay? Squeeze and rotate. No extra charge there. And relax. Squeeze and rotate. Okay, relax. Let everything go. Take a nice big deep breath in. And exhale and turn back in the opposite direction. Harder, 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 harder. And relax. Okay, now take a deep breath in. Keep everything relaxed. Stay relaxed. Okay, now compare the two sides. Rotate left, rotate right. Do they feel the same or different?
Same.
They feel the same, okay. So now let's do this side. Now, actually, once you do that one more time, and what I want you to do is instead of getting a running start and throw it, I want you to just rotate under control. Okay? And right now, let's feel about even, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Remember when we started, you said it was easier to turn in that direction. So we want to loosen up the other side, but we don't want to loosen up too much, right? Because then, you know, they'll both be looser, but one side will be more. So we're kind of trying to balance you out, okay? So cross your arms over your chest, squeeze and rotate. And come on back, good. Squeeze and rotate. Come on back, good. Squeeze and rotate. Come on back, squeeze and rotate. Okay, now just stand up, take a walk. If we make you feel a little bit better, that's good.
Yeah, I feel lighter. I feel lighter. My back is still a little tweaked in the lower part.
And again, like,
And what I really felt it from when I was doing my squats.
yeah.
I was doing a 465.
Yeah.
A 405. That's why I felt like a really tight was tweaking my lower back. That's why I stopped.
Well, and to the same, like with this, the rookie move would be for me to keep digging in your lower back, trying to loosen you up. And then you wake up tomorrow and you can't ride. So the goal right now is to see, like, how do you feel tomorrow morning? Because we can always do more work, but if we do too much, we can't take it back. Fair enough? But I know I feel a lot.